now.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Psychic Wives podcast. I'm Kathy Rumsey.
And I'm Ginger Hendry.
And I'm Jerry Karabin.
So we are here, the Psychic Wives, talking today about animal communication. Just a few things that you can, housekeeping stuff we need to get out of the way first. Our website, thepsychicwives.com, super easy. You can listen to our podcast on iTunes. You can search for The Psychic Wives. I'm thinking if you're listening to us, you probably have already found it. Do us a favor, if you would, subscribe to the podcast. That way it will automatically go into your feed every week when we have a new episode come out. Give us a rating or a like or whatever iTunes does for that. You can also find us on our YouTube channel, which I believe is also The Psychic Wives on YouTube. You can subscribe there. That is a video if you want to see our beautiful faces and our trying to be serious while we talk about some super fun and cool stuff. You can comment on that. Let us know what you think of the episode. Let us know what you want to hear about in future episodes. That would be awesome. Also, we are on Facebook at The Psychic Wives is our Facebook name. Interact with us there. Let us know. Again, what'd you think of this week's podcast? What do you want to hear from? What would you like us to talk about? If you're ever up for being on the podcast with us to get a reading, let us know. We would love that. We love doing readings and we love talking. So
and we have an episode coming up with readings in it.
Yes.
So you guys will get to see how that works.
It will. So anyway, today we are talking about animal communication and how it works. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee if it's daytime, or a martini perhaps if it's the evening. And enjoy.
Yeah, and we actually do say that on our website, I think. It's like, here's our podcast, so sit back, have a cocktail, and whatever. So again, tells us a little bit about us. We are psychic, but we're wives. Have a cocktail every now and then. Yeah, so like Kathy said, let's talk about animal communication and how it works. So we all actually know each other via animal communication and how we got started. So let's all just say a little bit of how we found animal communication. I know I started when through a shamanic, I became a shamanic practitioner and, intuition and da-da-da-da-da. And somebody gave me a book, and it was one of Danielle McKinnon's books. And she's an animal communicator. And I found my way to her classes where I met these guys. We all were students together. We've all gone through Danielle's whole certification program all the way up to the top, the highest class that she has been giving up until now. I'm sure there will be more coming through that, but that's how we all met each other. So why don't you guys talk about how we learned to do animal communication and what it looks like? Ginger?
I think for me, I started, I had a love for animals like we all do. And I really did feel connected, from the time I grew up and whatnot. And I actually left a corporate career to start a pet sitting company. I knew I wanted to work with animals. People tried to talk me out of it. No way. I ended up doing that. And as I took care of people's animals, I recognized, that's where I really saw my intuition take off. And so for me, it was recognizing small things. My particular strength at the time, what I kind of led with, was feeling. So I was able to sort of feel my way around an animal. I could feel if they were off emotionally. Many times I picked up things on an animal that wasn't feeling well. And a lot of times it was ahead of time and I didn't recognize that. So it was just really, I guess, being more present. I wasn't working a corporate job, right? I was one-on-one, and recognizing that for me, emotional, whatever, connection really was an intuitive connection.
And so it really kind of helped you with your pet sitting business?
Oh, incredibly. It really did. I mean, and I have all kinds of stories I won't bore you with, but I had some situations where I thought that I saw things. I'll tell you one quickly. I was walking a dog that I saw a limp, and I left a note, and the owner the next day said, no, I didn't see it, but thanks for letting me know. Then I kept watching when I was walking the dog, and the dog did not limp. So I said, not a big deal. And then I'd take my eye off, and it would catch my eye, and I'd see him limp again. I'm like, what is up with it? Write it in the note again. Long story, but after a few days, the customer called and said, you don't need to come tomorrow. He is limping, and I saw it. And she ended up taking him to the vet. By the time she got him to the vet, his foot and leg had started to swell. He had a staph infection. And so it was days later that this happened. And I thought at the time, how weird is that? And then I realized, I don't know how, I didn't see it with my eyes. I saw it in my mind's eye, I guess is how I would say it. And so I started to really pay attention to that and recognize that I was doing a lot of that and didn't know it because I was moving so fast. And so for me, that was like the spark. And then I saw Danielle, she was local to me, at a workshop. And at first I thought, oh, this is so much fun. I'm like a good guesser. Well, exercise, I know animals, so I'm a good guesser. And then, it became more prevalent for me to sort of see that. And then I jumped in when I saw that she did the school and whatnot and connected with both of you. But that's where it started for me.
Were you two? I don't ever remember because we were not in the same class. Were you guys in the same class?
Yes.
Okay, so you guys were in the same class, and I was
From the
like,
very beginning, right, Ginger?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were not her very first class. I think we were her second class.
We were her second class.
Yeah.
Okay, so I must have been her third then.
Right.
I guess I was like a little bit behind you guys. So as we kind of said before, we said that we were going to be doing some live readings, and that'll be probably in next week's episode that we do. So you'll get to see kind of how it works. But Kathy, do you want to talk a little bit about like the steps of like an animal communication reading?
Yeah.
And how about the way we learned it, and then do you do it differently now? You know what I mean?
It's so funny because it's like, I don't know. And the three of us are all like, not only have we taken Danielle's classes to become animal communicators, but the three of us have taken her classes to become teachers of animal communication. So it's funny because I'm like, I don't remember which parts I learned the first time or that I've learned and morphed into since we've kind of retaken her classes as we've gone through the teaching portion of it.
Yeah.
So not that you start off this way learning in animal communication, but the way a reading works, like when I have a client is I always connect intuitively with the human first to get personality and just kind of a feel for their energy. So sometimes it's really just personality information, and sometimes it's energetically, I can feel something's going on in the moment, and it depends, reading to reading, person to person. So I do that first. I can't remember at what point in the process I learned that, but it was not at the very beginning. And it really just helps solidify the space that I'm in. And then I connect with the animal, and it's a big, the less info, the better. Not that I can't do a reading with a picture, but I don't like to do readings with pictures. I like to not know, like if it's a dog, I don't want to know what breed, because in another part of my life, I'm a therapy dog evaluator. So I've done a lot of work on canine body language, on understanding different breeds and their little idiosyncrasies as far as temperament goes. So, or just with my own personal breeds that I've had as pets.
So it's kind of like if you know a lot about the breed.
Well, I just worry that like I'm going to get out of that intuitive part of my, and I'm, if I have a client who's like, I have a German Shepherd, well, I've had German Shepherds my whole life. And not to say that they haven't all had their own little personality quirks or traits, but there's a general, I know what German Shepherds are generally like. So if I get a piece of information, I don't want to question like, oh, am I just saying this or getting this because I know this breed or whatever. So Yeah, so we can, you know, I connect with the animal. I still have the connection with the human going, connect with the animal, get their personality. If the animal's alive, I do a body mapping just to say, show me what it feels like to be in your body. And one of my favorite examples of that was doing a reading on an animal, and I didn't know what the animal was, which is just something we practice. So this is it's an innate ability that the three of us have and that lots of people have, but whatever, we're talking about us. So
because we're like that.
You know, it's our innate ability, but it's also like we practice, we work on it, we fine tune our methods and stuff. And one of the things that I love to do with practicing is to connect with an animal, and all I know is the animal's name and if it's a boy or a girl, if it's not obvious, but I don't know what kind of animal it is. And so I was doing a practice and I was given the name of this animal, and I don't even remember his name now. It was a boy. And I was just like, oh, it's so weird. My arms feel so long, and like I can move my shoulders in ways that I shouldn't be able to move my shoulders, and blah, blah, blah. And it was a sloth. And it was like I was totally, and it's so funny because I do this a lot when I'm, you know, I move, like when I'm doing readings, I'm not just sitting there doing, like I'm moving and I'm whatever. And I was in front of the person who knew the animal, and she was laughing because I'm doing all of this, but I'm like
really slow.
But I'm doing it slowly, and she's just like, okay, that makes sense. And I have no idea what I'm talking about. But then afterwards, she's like, so what, you know, whatever the animal's name was, is a sloth. And I'm like, that's so cool. You know, and what I love about this is that, like, I was already like had a business when I did that one. And I was like, that's so cool that, like, you know, I'm still amazed that it works
every time.
I just, you know, like, and again, it's like, how do you know, it's a perfect example of, you can't make that shit up. We can swear, right? Like I
have the
E. We won't be vulgar, but you can't make that stuff up.
Yes.
You know.
Well, sometimes people will ask that. They'll say, you don't need to see a picture. And I can show you a picture, and I do the same thing. I prefer.
I don't want to see a picture. I don't want to see it.
But the thing is, I say to people, it's like, how do you do that? And I say, well, I don't need to see it, and you already know what your animal looks like. You know, I don't need that. That's not real validation necessarily to me. What I really like too is when you're doing a reading, and I don't know what the breed is, because I'm the same way. We're handling dogs for so many years, dogs and cats, and you know, they'll show me a real picture of a pit bull, let's say. And there's usually a reason why they show me what they really are. Or if they show me something different, but there's a reason why. Like I did a reading one time for somebody who had a pit bull, and it turned out that it was a pit bull, but it seemed very important to the animal for me to know. And it turned out that he was having some problems. He was a new animal in the house with other animals, and there was some issue going on. She thought it was this pit bull, but it was the other animals in the house. And basically him showing me the pit bull was what he was saying. Pit bulls are known for the lovey-dovey, you know, there's a big thing about what great dogs they are, but you don't want to tick them off. And that's what he was showing me. Like, I can be that lovey-dovey, or I can go the other way if this problem isn't fixed. So it's really cool how an animal shows themselves to us as well.
And I always actually say that to clients. I'm saying, okay, so don't get too caught up on the, you know, 3D of, like, if your dog is a German Shepherd and he comes in as something else. I always give the example. I've read like a Chihuahua that shows me a Saint Bernard. And that is a piece of information in itself, because maybe this Chihuahua sees himself as a huge dog, or saved somebody jumping in a lake or something. Who knows, you know, like a Saint Bernard would do, or whatever, or likes whiskey. I don't know. You know, the barrel with the whiskey. But like sometimes just, you know, so I always say, don't get too connected about that, which kind of leads us to the next question. Well, first of all, I want to go back, like our steps are like, you know, like Kathy said, connect with the human, we connect with the animal. We may do a body scan if the animal is live. If the animal's already passed, we don't usually do that. we allow the human, like, okay, what are your questions, you know, and then we try to get answers to the questions. And then we move into that piece, which is like your animals, the animals in our lives are always working with us on stuff. They're helping us grow. They're helping us improve. They're helping us expand. And so that's kind of the difference between, and this is going to sound funny, regular animal communication and that deeper level.
What's their purpose? Yeah. What's their purpose of being in our lives? Yeah.
Yeah. What's their purpose? Because they're always trying, again, to teach us something or to help us move forward. Give us some examples, you guys. Help me out. What kind of examples, like lessons? Like maybe you're like a person that's like really super controlling, and so your animal is acting out in a certain way to bring your attention to that. Mm-hmm. Those are the kind of things that we uncover in a reading, and that's why it's so important that we read the human first. We get to know the human first, and the animal, and then it's kind of like this like dance, and then you're like, like at the end, like that's what they're doing that for.
Yeah, so for me, what I find, so for me personally, what has come up with pretty much all of my animals, because it's a lesson, it's a thing for me that I'm really working on. And I find it a lot for my clients because we do tend to attract like energies to us. So I do tend to attract a lot of people who are looking for an animal communicator who are attracted to me because they see pieces of themselves in me. They don't realize it, but they're just like, oh, I see her and whatever, I want to have a reading with her. Is boundary setting. Is
the three of us talk about this a lot.
Yeah, it might be.
The three of us all have a little bit of these issues.
Yeah, we are all the three of us are all very similar around this. And it is especially like, the more I love you, the looser my boundaries get. Yes. I have very good boundaries in certain parts of my life where whatever, but man alive, if I have a dog, and I have a dog right now who he can do no wrong dog. And I have luckily I'm working on it. So I have been able to be like, you can do no wrong, but you're still misbehaving. Like I still love you completely unconditionally, but that needs to stop. And it has been a process. And it's just one of those, because I need to learn boundaries in my life of learning to say no, of learning to not allow something to be happening around me that I don't want happening around me. And he's showing me how to handle that in his doggy way. Mm-hmm. So when he was a puppy, it was, not coming when I called him. It was coming, but then not stopping and sitting and doing what I want when I ask him to, or it was walking with him and he would just sit and he'd be like,
I'm done.
I'm in the middle of the street, or I'm in the middle of a parking lot, and make me, and so it's so cool how they know just how to help us. They know just what we need to work on. And they're like, we'll show you in the way we know how to show you. And even animals who aren't our own are doing that for us.
Yeah. And so it's really funny because sometimes people come to us and they're like, I just want to know why my dog is, peeing in the living room.
And what I love is even more than that is the people who go, I want you to connect with my animal and tell them to stop peeing in the living room.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. I want you to connect with my animal because they're doing this, so make them stop. And I'm like, yeah. And then when they sometimes, because they don't really know going into it, and I actually have it on my website, I'm going to read you first, because I've had people, no, don't read me. And I'm like, dude, this is the point. I read you and it all comes out. And at the end, they're like, and they're usually like, oh my God, they're glad. Like, because now they figured it out and it's gone deeper than that. So it is a really, that's kind of the difference between, like I said, regular animal communication and the level to which we take it. I wanted to mention this because I thought it's funny, because again, we're going to do live readings in our next episode, and we'll most likely be saying to them, don't tell us a whole lot. So like in a reading, and when I go into a reading, I'm always like, you're gonna hear me say a gazillion time, does that make sense? Do you understand that? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? And I want them to say yes or not really, or, yes, no, or not really, or something like that, because we don't want people to be like, oh my God, that makes so much sense, because whenever I do this, because we're like, no, because it's like less is more. And I'll get that. Kathy and I have done this before. Ginger, I don't know if you and I have done that. Like, we'll get a really long email from somebody explaining this whole story about their whole animal. And we're like, okay, I don't want the particulars. I don't want to read all that. And we've been known to, I think you
yeah, I've sent you emails. I'm like, can you read this and tell me if they need to reschedule their
I have to address, because we don't want to read them and get all that information.
And I remember one in particular, Jerry, that you were like, oh, dear God, do not.
It went on for like 5 pages or something. And I'm like,
and it was one of those, and she thought she knew exactly. And it was kind of dramatic. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, we feel people, there's something going on with your animal. It's a big deal. And I remember it was a big deal.
It was a big deal
of stuff that had gone on. But
if I had read it, holy cow, would I have had a hard time in the reading.
Right. Because what happens is, like, when we're reading, you're using the right side of your brain. You don't want to be using you don't want to be using your logical left brain. So the more information people give you, then I think, Ginger, you said it before, like with the breeds or stuff like that. And then it's like, okay, was that me?
Right.
Because I know this about the breed, or because I know what she told me or whatever. So then it gets like a little convoluted there. So the readings are, human, animal, questions, body scan, what we call the message, or what is that the animal trying to teach you about it. And it is funny because, that's the way we were kind of taught. So we usually go into it that way. But you all have had readings, right, where it's like I've had a reading where it's like, okay, I'm going to try to, oh, no, I'm not. And all of a sudden the animal like takes you, and you're like, okay, I have to throw my loose format out the window and just fly by the seat of my pants. Do you guys can either of you speak to
I
that?
had one, and it was a few years ago, and it was a woman who actually found my website, or found me because she was looking for a pet sitter, and I was outside her area. But on my pet sitting website, I had my intuitive link. And she said, I never heard of such a thing. And I think it would be really fun. And so I did a reading on her animal. And although there was some fun, it was a huge, deep lesson that was stunning. I mean, I really kind of thought it would go that way too, right? Because she was like, oh, this will be fun. And I could tell my mother, and, and it went really deep, really fast. And that animal must have been dying to say all the things that she had to say. And it took the woman completely by surprise. And the animal was very, very accurate on everything because she had, even at the very, very end, we had like 2 minutes left. And she said, can I just ask where her favorite place is? And I saw it, and she said, I knew it. I told my mother that's where her favorite place is. So it was a really great way to wrap up, but it went in a whole different direction than I thought it was going to go.
That's awesome. So here's a couple of questions, because I always like to ask these questions. Remember, we would do this, the three of us have done this before in like a live webinar, again, working with Danielle's community or whatever. And we used to call it CPPs, which is what we were considered certified professional practitioners. Anyway, we called it CPPs Getting Coffee. Kathy had said, wouldn't this be a great thing because of Jerry Seinfeld?
Jerry Seinfeld, yeah. Comedians in cars getting coffee. Yeah.
Comedians in cars getting coffee. So it was kind of like an interview thing where we would interview each other or stuff like this. And we always used to talk about these, and they're actually really cool. So what is the funniest, let's each do what's the funniest, best reading that we've ever done, the funniest or the best reading that you've ever done?
So I'll go first, and I don't think it was funny, but it's the coolest reading, and I'm gonna caveat it with, I may have had funnier readings or whatever, but I don't tend to remember my readings.
Yeah.
But this reading, I do remember because of what happened after. But I was reading for a woman who was having me read an animal that was belonged to one of the big, I can't say the name. So one of the big like amusement parks, like a national chain amusement park. And she had some questions about this animal. So I knew what species the animal was, but I didn't know anything past that. And so I connected and I got this animal that was definitely showing me a lot of trepidation, a lot of anxiety, a lot of blah, blah, blah. And really went right into, this is the problem. This is how it's happening. This is what I need. Like, it was awesome. It was like a 20-minute, super quick reading. I did not read the human first because she wasn't his human. He doesn't have a human. He lives in at
this place,
whatever.
Yeah.
So I didn't know who the animal was, blah, blah, blah. And there was a little bit of like, it had a weird name. I don't even remember the animal's name, but it had a weird name that you couldn't tell if it was a boy or a girl. And they referred, and I don't even remember what sex it is, but it's like, whatever sex they referred to it as was not its sex. So I was like, really, it's a girl or it's a boy or whatever. So anyway, awesome reading. She really appreciated it, blah, blah, blah. And then she said, oh, if you want to see a picture, you can just Google the name and blah, blah, blah. This animal's been on Johnny Carson. It's been this and that. And I was like, holy crap. If I had known that beforehand, I would have never been confident saying that. This was way back when I was starting out. I would have never been confident with this animal's coming in skittish and anxious and not wanting to be in the spotlight and all these things. But if I had known it had been on TV and all this other stuff, yeah, I would have been so up in my head.
Yeah.
And it was such a cool, like, driving the point home. I mean, first of all, it was an awesome reading. And to be able to help someone like in that area,
right, yeah,
was such a cool experience for me. But also just the like, oh, this is why it's so important to know as little as possible about the animal beforehand, because I would have been up in my head going, why am I going to say this when I know that this bird flies around the country, or, you know, whatever. Okay, I just let that go. You know, this animal travels around the country. It goes on TV. It does all this stuff. Like, I would have been doubting myself a million times over. So
cool.
Yeah.
Ginger, what about you? Craziest, wildest, funniest?
I think this one, because it ended up, it started out so heavy and painful because it was a woman who lost, we call heart dog. They happened to be, you know, she was particularly attached to this animal. And so and the animal had passed several months earlier. And so there was a lot to go through and grieve, and she was teary. And we get sort of to the end, like 2/3 of the way through, and the dog said to me, ask her to tell you a funny story about me. Like, oh, that's never happened before. And so I asked her, and there was a big pause, and then she started to laugh, and she said, oh my God, there were so many funny stories. And then she tells me this one, I might have told you before, but she tells me the story about how every time she took this dog to a place that he really liked, and there were some dog parks and things that she would take him to, he didn't want to go home. And so when she would be leaving, he would drop on the ground. And she said, not like, you know, some dogs lay down and they won't move and you have to pick them up. And he was a big guy. She said he would like the bones would be gone in his legs. And he would ground, sometimes bounce his face off the ground. So people would come running and they'd say, oh my God, is your dog okay? Because they think the dog fainted. And she's like, yeah, he doesn't want to go home. So, so then she told me a few other stories, but it wasn't until actually I hung up, because the whole end of the reading, like, it went deep, and then we ended up on that note. And after I hung up, I thought, oh my God, what a great message for her. It was like, you're grieving, you need to grieve, but remember all the fun we had. What a great life we had together. Mm-hmm, and that's what he wanted to end the reading on.
So cool.
Really powerful.
That's so cool when you again, we said it before, kind of letting them leave. I'm welling up a little bit about that one. That was kind of cool. I'll do my funniest one was I read a guinea pig. Okay, so it was a guinea pig, and a guinea pig had passed, and I was reading her human, a gentleman, and his question was, and we say this like how we're kind of just the conduits. So it's like, sometimes the stuff that comes in, I'm like, okay, I have no idea what the heck that means, but I'm just going to say it or whatever. And sometimes stuff will come in and I'll be like, okay, that can't possibly be correct, but we've learned, full transparency, what comes in comes out. You know what I mean? And so I was reading this guinea pig, and his answer was when she was live, or his question was when she was live, what was her favorite thing to do? And I'm dating myself to some people here, but not here, but if you're young and you've never watched Saturday Night Live, you may not know this, but does everybody remember Toonces the driving cat?
Toonces the driving cat.
So this guinea pig is showing me herself as Toonces driving cat. And I'm like, what? And I get information like that, movies and TVs and stuff. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, okay, full disclosure to the gentleman I was leaving. I'm like, I'm seeing her behind the wheel of the car. And he started welling up and getting really, really emotional. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I have no idea why she's giving me this. And when he could talk again, he goes, no, we used to do that. So he used to take her with him driving around, and she would kind of sit on his lap with her little tiny paws on the bottom of like the steering wheel or whatever. And I was like, that's freaking awesome. Do you know what I mean? And Kathy, I think you had said it before, to this day, and I think it's really important, and I say this all the time, this is something that we do that cannot be ego driven. It has to be like we are being of service. So we still do, I do, get a little nervous every time I go into a reading, because you're like, oh God, what if nothing happens? You know what I mean? Like, what if it's all of a sudden gone, or whatever I can do, what if it's all of a sudden gone? But there's never, at the end of every reading, not everyone, but every reading, sometimes I'm like, man, this is so cool.
Yes.
You know, like, how is this? We still have that, how is this happening point? And I think that's important. I think the second we go into these readings like, yeah, I'm all that, I got this, I'm not nervous at all, then we're in trouble.
Then we were in trouble. And I think one of the keys too, I think you were just talking about, was to say what comes through, even though it sounds
Everything.
crazy. Because I did one last week and the reading went great, and it was just about ready to, we were finishing up. And the picture that it was a dog showed me was that she turned her attention away from me and she was watching TV. And that's like, how was, so I said that to him. I said, this sounds crazy, because we had already asked her, we had already gotten all the info. And he started to well up, and he said, that means, I don't know what it meant, because he didn't tell me, but he said, that means something to me. Her watching TV means something.
That's awesome.
I'm very glad that you said that. And I wasn't going to say, because it seems so insignificant at the end of a deep reading.
Yeah, and sometimes it's also like a piece. I did a reading once, and it was the animal, and the animal was about to pass. And it was the little girl's birthday, and so sometimes the animal shows, this is how I want it to go down. Not often, but sometimes they will say, or not all the time, but sometimes they'll say, this is how I want it to go down. And this cat was saying, you know, no, it's her birthday. I want to be with the family. We're going to sit at home. And she showed me the specific blue blanket that she lays on and all this stuff. And whatever. So it was a very specific thing. And then like a couple weeks later, they asked me to connect with her again. And I did. And again, I'm reading a cat now. And she showed me a dead mouse in front of her. Okay. So the cat that was passing, but she showed me this dead mouse in front of her. And I thought, okay, that's got to be me, because it's a cat and a dead mouse. That's too obvious. I'm not going to say that. But then I thought, no, full transparency. And I said, okay, she's showing me like a dead mouse, like as if somebody presented her with this dead mouse. Well, it was the other cat in the family that day brought her a mouse.
That's awesome.
The one that was like, whatever. So I was like, oh, big lesson there, because I was getting in my left brain saying, that's me, I shouldn't say that. That's just, you know what I mean? So we've learned to whatever comes in, comes out.
Well, what I love is that you didn't want to share it because it was so obvious, a cat and a dead mouse.
Yeah.
The reading that I did, that I was referring to earlier, I had gotten a flash of this animal was having issues, particularly with one trainer from the amusement park. And the woman who I was doing the reading with had said, do you know which trainer it is? Like, do you know where who the human is involved? And I saw a flash of an animated feature film,
Like a cartoon character.
like a cartoon character. And I was like, well, that's really random. And I didn't share it because it seemed so random. And it turned out after the fact, luckily I was able to follow up with her, because when she said, you know, go Google the name of this animal, blah, blah, blah. Well, it came up with the animal at the theme park, and that movie was tied into the animal, and it showed like it answered her question. But this was when I was just starting out and I was practicing. That's why it was such a short reading, was I was just practicing. It seemed too random.
Yeah.
So I didn't share it. And it was such a great moment for me to, if you get it, say it. However you receive it, if you receive it, you share it.
Yeah. Even if you have to say, okay, and I'll do this sometimes.
No
okay,
idea. Yeah.
This is totally random and I don't know if this is my left brain getting in the way or whatever, I say it. So it's like kind of like just whatever you get, you put out there.
Yeah,
so.
it's so cool.
So that's kind of a little bit about animal communication from all of us. So I hope that you know, because people are like, what? You do what? You know what I mean? So we just kind of wanted to share a little bit about that. And as the episodes go forward, we're going to share other things that we each individually do, because yes, that's the one thing that we all do together, but then we all kind of do some other things on our own. We'll get into
One or two things.
Akashic Records and the Equine Alchemy with Kathy and everything. And like I said, next week, I believe we're going to do live readings, just little short ones, whatever, but to kind of give you guys a demonstration of how that works and everything, so you can see that. So that is it for now, this current episode. We thank you all again. And what is all the stuff you said, Kathy? We have to say it all the time. We should really get something like website.
ThePsychicWives.com website. We're on Facebook at The Psychic Wives. YouTube, The Psychic Wives. There's a theme here. You can find our podcast you can find our podcast on iTunes. It's just search on iTunes for The Psychic Wives. Be sure to subscribe to either YouTube or iTunes so you're always updated when we post a new episode. Like us on Facebook. Interact with us, please. We want to know, what do you guys think? Are you enjoying it? Is there something you'd like to hear us, discuss? Anything?
Yeah, because if you don't give us ideas, we're just going to keep going and going and doing our own thing.
That's right.
But we'll be having fun. So.
We'll be having fun. So if you'd like some input, or you'd like to put some input, let us know.
Awesome. But thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week, and you'll be able to hear all these different steps we talked about today in action. So
great.
Awesome.
So thanks everybody. We will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.